Good morning. I am redoing this because apparently I screwed something up, and I'm not surprised. But this is about the Proles in chapter 7. And in your books, I believe it starts on page 69. And chapter 7 starts by Winston writing, "If there is hope," wrote Winston, "it lies in the Proles. If there is hope, it must lie in the Proles, because only there, in those swarming, disregarded masses, 85% of the population of Oceania, could the force to destroy the party ever be generated." So he knows that there's no way that anybody within the party could possibly bring down Big Brother. Even if the Brotherhood exists, he knows that it's not possible because they don't have the numbers. And he goes on to talk about um, the Proles just need to be woken up. Um, they start to riot over something, and he's really excited about the fact that they're rioting because he sees just the kind of power that they possess. He talks about a couple women who are fighting back and forth violently over a saucepan. And he laments here, "Why was it that they could never shout like that about anything that mattered?" He wrote, "Until they became conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious." And remember, I think I told you at the beginning of this book that the warning is for us. Orwell is warning us. We are the proles. We are meant to be connecting here with the proles. And he goes on. Let's see. Here we go. This part here. "Left to themselves, like cattle turned loose upon the plains of Argentina, they had reverted to a style of life that appeared to be natural to them, a sort of ancestral pattern. They were born, they grew up in the gutters, they went to work at 12, they passed through a brief blossoming period of beauty and sexual desire, they married at 20, they were middle-aged at 30, they died for the most part at 60. Heavy physical work, the care of home and children, petty quarrels with neighbors, films, football, beer, and above all gambling filled up the horizons of their minds. To keep them in control was not difficult." Now think about a really big event that's happening or happens every February, the Super Bowl. To what degree is our natural American life, or any first world country for that matter, how much does that actually fit the bill in talking about heavy physical work, the care of home and children, petty quarrels with neighbors, like whose water is dropping onto whose property and whose leaves belong to whom, films, football, beer, and above all gambling filled up the horizons of their minds. I mean, the Super Bowl alone checks off a lot of these boxes here. And the scary part is that it's not difficult to keep them in control. There's this old saying from ancient Rome of bread and circus, and it basically meant, according to the emperor, that if you keep your population entertained and if you keep them fed cheaply, that you can get away with just about anything because your population is going to be content. And if they're comfortable and content, they're not going to care really what you do. He goes on to say, he talks about the political thoughts of the proles, which pretty much doesn't exist. He says it was not desirable that the proles should have strong political feelings. And think about our modern society as well. All that was required of them was a primitive patriotism which could be appealed to whenever it was necessary to make them accept longer working hours or shorter rations. And even when they became discontented, as they sometimes did, their discontent led nowhere, because being without general ideas, they could only focus it on petty specific grievances. The larger evils invariably escaped their notice. The great majority of proles did not even have telescreens in their homes because they didn't need it. It was that easy to keep control over them. Because remember, it is Winston's job to change information. And that is the information that the proles receive. And again, maybe think about the fact that only 5 major companies own all of our media companies. And so we're really only getting information from 5 different companies. not hard to imagine how it might not be completely accurate. Let's see. He talks about that too, about how it might literally every word in the history books, even the things that one accepted without question was pure fantasy. I'm trying to find what else I wanted to show you. Here it was. Everything faded into mist. The past was erased. The erasure was forgotten. The lie became truth. Again, I'm not saying that it is this way, but just imagine it's not difficult to imagine how history books and media stories are not exactly as they seem. And then this last part here is something that gives a lot of people the heebie-jeebies when they read it, and it starts here. The story really began in the middle 60s, the period of the Great Purges in which the original leaders of the revolution were wiped out once and for all. By 1970, none of them was left except Big Brother himself. And remember, the story was written in 1948, it was published in 1949, and if you think back to our real middle 60s and all of the revolutions that were going on at the time, just listen. So JFK assassinated November 22nd, 1963. He was a big supporter of a lot of those movements. Martin Luther King Jr. assassinated February 22nd, 1965. I'm sorry, no, that was Malcolm X. Malcolm X was assassinated February 22nd, 1965. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated April 4th, 1968. And Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated June 6th, 1968. And if you think about it, those were some really big revolutionary leaders. They were all gone by the year 1970. And since then, we haven't really had a real big, large-scale revolutionary movement, nor have we really had revolutionary leaders along the scale of those men. And one last thing that I want to mention to you is at the very end of the chapter. Let's see if we can find it. He writes in his journal, here we go. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows. In other words, freedom is the ability to say what you know to be true. This is important. It's going to show up later on in the book. Okay. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I miss you all.